One is the cooperative conditions, the factors that assist in the causation. By material cause or substantial cause, we are talking about the very stuff that turns into the effect. So, you can talk about a physical continuum of a physical entity. It's the very stuff or the material that turns into the effect is the material cause. But you need many other factors that would allow that transition or that process to take place. So these are the cooperative causes or contributory causes, one could say. And similarly, when we talk about conditions, there are different ways in which conditions can affect a result. In the scriptures, there are, for example, of course, although these complexity in the ways in which conditions can affect a result may have more to do with the complexities of the operation of mind or functions of mind. However, we find in the scriptures there's a discussion of 5 types of conditions, such as the objective condition, which refers to the perceptive object. And then you have sensory faculties, like the organs that give rise to the perception. Then you have the immediately preceding condition, which is the earlier continuum of your consciousness, and so on. So you see there is a kind of complex understanding of the process of causation in Buddhism.
Jenny, when a yelling to Susan, when a may yelling to Slavina Bajik Zadi, Korachi, Trade Payagi, Zayunj, Trade Payag, Nubit, Zayunj, any, the main yelling Shirmando. And Mekon Baba of Jig yelling, Guamnoa. So Takora Bajik Zadi Gane, Bayagi, because Zayunj, Nubit Zayunj. That dination, Shebe, Ten, Sheba, Sheba Kirungi, Ten Galia, Zayunj on down one assembly. The Ampana Pamer Kudana, my own sort of shit. She was how could I got a what I should do. Checkada Tashi, when the Shiva Tara, then a Chevy, and a Gome Shiva do Kosoke, Gome one demo Dubodu, with Gia Mabere. Did he need Tikia again, Nubajik, Zaji Shiva Tara Dene, Kushabaji. And Taki won't be Dene, Yakurji, sometimes matter.
So, for example, in the case of, say, let's take the example of fire. What would be the material cause or the substantial cause of the fire? One could say, that there is a potential existing within the fuel that is used to burn, make a fire, which then becomes the fire. So similarly, in the case of consciousness, perhaps the issue becomes more complex. For example, like say our sensory perceptions, sensory consciousnesses. Although what is needed, we need, it is obvious that we need the physical sensory organs in order for sensory perceptions to take place.
No. Nervous system.
Of course, this would also include the nervous system as the basis, the physical basis for the occurrence. So although in the traditional sort of classical Buddhist scriptures there is hardly any discussion of the nervous system, the systems of sort of the nervous system, perhaps this is something that needs to be added onto the Buddhist epistemological texts or Buddhist texts on psychology. And however, the substantial cause of the consciousness would not be these physical entities. The substantial cause of the consciousness has to be understood in terms of its own continuum, be it in the form of a potential or a propensity or whatever, but it has to be understood in terms of its continuum. So one could, although it is a very difficult sort of a topic, but perhaps one could say that one can understand. So one could understand in terms of the continuum of the subtle consciousness, because we should not sort of lead ourselves into position where we end up implying that the material cause or the substantial cause of the entity or whatever it may be should be exactly the same, because we cannot maintain the position that the sensory perceptions, the substantial causes of sensory perceptions need not always be sensory perceptions, because sensory consciousnesses are gross levels of consciousness, and they are contingent to the physical organs of the individual being, whereas their continuum should be should be understood more at the level of subtle consciousness. So perhaps one could say that at a certain point they are in the form of potential rather than actual conscious states. So when we talk about consciousness or shepa, which is the Tibetan word, we should not have the notion that we are talking about one unitary sort of monolithic entity, something that is out there, or some kind of one entity. We must appreciate the complexity of the mental world.
다 시베 나로네 라지 간즈 패시 초와당 두시세야 당주 넘기지 가서 코베 딱과 용되게 다 코페지 뭐세 두실지 있어요.
So within the realm of mental phenomena, it seems that feelings or sensations and thoughts are two sort of factors of mind which seem to be perhaps most predominant in our in our consciousness.
So
now let us try to sort of examine how do the feelings and how do the discursive thoughts occur within ourselves, within us.
루지 쉐베 코르드큐베 다 초와 다 육구요래 다야 디따서 라가체 다조 있는 가도 데 이시 코르기다 초야 간에 도스다 상담이나 머시안들 레바다지다 가서 데 너브 시스템 디든 저 된대요리 디따시 십사고 타는 상담 것이.
So when talking about our feelings, of course we are talking about two dimensions of an existence where one can speak about feelings purely at the physical level of sensations. But the more complex sort of issue is the trying to conceive or trying to understand feelings or torwa in terms of mental consciousness, the mental consciousness. And although, of course, one has to accept that there must be some connections with the nervous system of the body, but we must also be able to account for deeper levels of our feelings as well, sort of feeling, or one could say tones of experience.
십사고 다제 말을라 다제 말을 이내 또 다제 체험에 통하네 다시 룰 주어하게 매 룰 주어 땅 모임 즉sem 관계 심 찌지고 심 가서 그게 되잖아 있으셔 심도 누구로 두 뒤니 근데 관계 통하네 룰이 주어 줘야 돼 지단도 변화 다 체리 가서 용장이 변화 미류 된기 로당 통하네 하라면 되셔도 돼야 매버든데
So here, of course, I'm pointing towards the sort of the nature of mental consciousness, the sixth mental consciousness. Here, I would like to point out that, of course, although the researches which are being undertaken now is quite few, but also at a very